Now, Curtin, Hawke, Chifley, Whitlam and Keating, they're all the Australian Labor Party's best-known true believers. But what about the relative unknowns who kept the flame burning during Labor's lean post-war years when Sir Robert Menzies and the Liberals dominated politics?
Well, Labor's Shadow Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Chris Bowen, has authored a new book about some of the ALP's unsung heroes. And he joins me now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Lisa.
So much history has been written about the Labor Party, and yet reading through this book of yours, you realise how little has been written about some key characters.
Yeah, I think that's right, Lisa. Politics tends to be dominated by the big names, the big, strong, domineering personalities, and particularly the Labor Party, I guess, in history, from Fisher through to Curtin, through to Whitlam, through to Hawke and Keating. But of course, history is so much richer than that. So I wanted to take just a few of the names from Labor Party history who've either been underappreciated, in my view, or forgotten, and just tell some of the broader story of Labor Party history, the stories of some of the true believers who really should be better recognised in Australian political and Labor Party history. Yeah,
with suffragette Lillian Locke and the first federal deputy leader. What did you take away from it? Did you learn something about your party? And, you know, when you talk about the true believers and what Labor should be doing for them now, what did you learn?
Well, of course, you always learn when you delve deeper into history, and that's one of the reasons I think it's good for politicians to sort of step back from time to time and either look forward or look back and look at some of the broader sweeps of history to help us navigate what we should be doing today. So there are some wonderful figures here who really, of course, have lessons today. Lillian Locke, who you mentioned, was a Labor suffragist, a very strong advocate of women getting the vote. And we don't really talk about that part of Australian history very much because the vote for women, it appears, from a view of history compared to other countries, came relatively easily. But of course, it was a huge struggle at the time. And she really had to fight very hard with her colleagues. And she's an amazing part of Australian history and a link to Australian literary history as well, because she was the inspiration for one of the earlier winners of the Miles Franklin Award, the book Careful He Might Hear You, which of course became a great Australian movie, which not many people have made the connection between Labor history and literary history. And of course, Gregor McGregor, who you mentioned, who nobody really ever remembers these days, was the first deputy leader of the Labor Party, but was, at the time, he became deputy leader completely blind, totally blind, and was one of the most compelling speakers in Australian political history, they say. There's no recordings of him anymore, but because he had no notes, he would do everything from memory, and they say he dominated the Senate chamber for the first 15 years of the Federation.